Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Madden Benz Unfiltered, brought to you by Rush to Crush Cancer. More than a bike ride, it's a mission. Join us May 19th for the Rush to Crush Cancer bike ride. To register, go to rushtocrushcancer.org and help us in the fight against cancer. Join the ride. Mark is joining us from Las Vegas. That's why you've got that weird hue, that glow around him. He's in a hotel room right now. Mark,
no, that's not exactly why. It's more like Madden Benz Unlit today because it is 6:30 in the morning here. All I have is the light of the lamp behind me. If I open the blinds, I might get a little neon flashing through, but nothing that would help. So this is the best I can do.
You've got a cherub-like glow around you. It looks like you have ascended into the heavens.
With any luck.
Were you ready to ascend to the heavens or plunge yourself into the depths of hell after the Bills game? I know you had a lot going on the team that didn't win last night.
Oh, yeah, I lost $400 on the Bills. I figured if they were ever going to win, it was going to be that game. It turns out they're never going to win. I really believe, Tim, that some teams get it in their DNA where they just aren't going to win a big game. They aren't going to ascend to heights that their roster might dictate, that their level of play, because the Bills had won, 7 games in a row up through that loss to Kansas City. But, and to lose wide right like Scott Norwood all those years ago, it was just an odd game, but a great game to watch if you didn't have a lot of money the wrong way.
I'm glad you brought that up, and we can go here first since we didn't get to it on the podcast. We'll get into lots of Steelers stuff in just a second, but it was discussed in the DV morning show today. I was on with those guys, and they were talking about Josh Allen, and I guess Bomani Jones made some comment, according to them, about how Josh Allen is sort of skating through criticism. He's not getting the criticism that most quarterbacks do for not winning a Super Bowl yet or getting to a Super Bowl yet. Do you think that's fair, Mark? Is that on Allen? Or I kind of agree to your greater point. I don't know how
I wonder what Bomani Jones might have been implying there, given Bomani's track record of the platitudes he likes to launch. I think Josh Allen's a great quarterback, and is the only reason they're any good.
Yeah, see, I think it's more about the Bills not getting out of their own way than it is Allen screwing them up.
I think he's comparable to Patrick Mahomes, maybe better. I think he enabled the Bills to play dead even with the Chiefs for 60 minutes. It wasn't Josh Allen missed that field goal. One thing that was weird about that game was I thought both offensive platoons ran out of gas in the fourth quarter. I mean, there were no punts forever, and then there were a series of punts, turnovers, that touchback fumble through the end zone, which I always see people say what a bad rule that is. I don't think it's a bad rule. I just think it's a rule. But yeah, both teams with the ball ran out of gas a little bit in that game. But no, I don't think Josh Allen should be held to a higher standard of criticism. I think his record speaks for itself, both good and bad.
A couple things about that. The rule, Mark, I think people don't like it because for whatever reason, now the goal line comes into play and you get rid of the previous 99 yards where if you go down, you just bring the ball back to the spot from where it was fumbled. Why does it matter that it was near the goal line when it happened?
Because that's the rule.
Well, I know, but you're saying it's a good rule or bad rule. That's why I'm saying it's a bad rule. I don't know why it has to be an addendum to the other 99 yards.
I like it just the way it is, and I think to complain about it's convenient.
The other point you brought up about the offense is I agree with you there, especially that's in juxtaposition to what happened in the NFC game where it felt like the Lions offense twice did what it needed to do to attempt to put the game away, and Baker got one touchdown in between to keep the game alive. Like those offenses kept it going on the NFC side.
Yeah, but they weren't as consistent during the game either. Like for 3 quarters, the Kansas City and Buffalo offenses were juggernauts. They couldn't be stopped. And like I said, they appeared to run out of gas, maybe ran out of luck. Maybe that's just how it went. But both were great football games. I thought just about all the games this weekend were pretty good.
How about the fake punt?
A little early. Didn't like it.
A little early. And it looked like they were running in mud. It looked like they miscalculated for a play like that, how far out it was.
Wasn't that DeMar Hamlin that got the ball?
It was Hamlin, yeah.
Boy, I guess miracles only get you so far, Tim.
Well, it felt like the Steelers game in New Orleans a couple years ago. Like Hamlin got tackled, and then he did this extra little bear crawl as if no one saw him go down to try to get the ball forward, and he still couldn't get there. That's how far away it was.
I don't like that. And don't get me wrong, I'm Damar Hamlin, everything he's been through, full power to him, okay? I mean, I'm glad he's okay, to the point where he can really screw up an AFC playoff game.
Well,
but I don't know why you put the ball in the hands of your 53rd guy on the roster as opposed to just running a play with Josh Allen. If you're going to go for it, just go for it straight up with your best guy.
Well, the game, Mark, that I think actually, strangely enough, that had the most interesting ties to where the Steelers are was actually probably Green Bay and San Francisco, because on the one hand, you got San Francisco with Purdy and Mr. Irrelevant in the draft class from Pickett that's probably going to go to the Super Bowl. It's been the best team in the NFC all year. And then you got Jordan Love, who a lot of people thought was an afterthought, taking the place of Aaron Rodgers, and they're both in better situations at quarterback than the Steelers are by a country mile.
Oh, of course they are. But they're both also victims of every time they have a bad game or even a bad play, a lot of media, fans, and especially fans here in Pittsburgh say, see, they're not that good. Purdy's a systems guy. He's a product that he has. Well, you know what? Purdy lost Deebo Samuel in that game and still played pretty good and rallied them to win at the end. I think Jordan Love really put Aaron Rodgers in his place, which is on the washed up list. And you're right. Both those teams are in significantly better shape at quarterback than the Steelers. Then again, I think just about every team in football is.
What happens with the Steeler quarterback situation, Mark? It sounded like in the podcast you think it's going to be Kenny Pickett, someone new at number 2, and then at that point,
Josh Dobbs.
Dobbs for sure.
That's my prediction. That is out of nowhere and with no, people whispering in my ear to back that up. But yeah, they're going to get somebody that they like, they're familiar with, but won't put any real pressure on Pickett. Okay, they don't want Mason Rudolph on the bench for the fans to clamor for every time Pickett throws an incompletion. That would be undue pressure. And I'm saying that part sarcastically because there should be as much pressure on Pickett as possible to A, try to spur him to better, and B, to make him either stand and deliver or fall by the wayside. I think the guy started 24 games, Tim. I know he stinks, okay? I know that for sure, that Kenny Pickett stinks. If they don't think that yet, they need to find out ASAP. And not putting pressure on him won't accomplish that.
I think they're putting all their chips into the middle of the table to see if that's going to be the case, because my hunch is that Mason Rudolph is going to be somewhere else next year. If you made me pick right now, I think he's a quarterback probably in the NFC somewhere, Atlanta, Minnesota, something like that. But I just don't think all things are equal for Mason Rudolph here in Pittsburgh. All things being equal, they're not. If I'm him, I need to have my trust bought that I've got a legit chance to win this starting competition. I might go to Minnesota or Atlanta and say, you know what? They haven't lied to me yet. They haven't misled me yet.
Well, I go wherever the most money is offered, even if it's in Pittsburgh where they have screwed him and would again, because his career's at that point. I don't think he's a starter anywhere, despite having played pretty good down the stretch for the Steelers. I just think this is all about money. And if he gets another chance to start, so be it. You could also make pretty good money as a career backup. And maybe that's what he's attained by how he played at season's end.
All right, Steelers fans want to hear from you. Are the Steelers overprotecting Kenny Pickett, and are they going to do so by way of letting Mason Rudolph walk? You made the point in the podcast, and I actually think it's a good one, Mark, that for as much as he might have shown that he's better than Pickett, that doesn't necessarily mean you put Mason Rudolph in as your starting quarterback and the Steelers are all of a sudden an 11-12 win team. They're still probably where they are now, which is 9-10 wins at best.
No, Rudolph did real good. I just still don't buy him as a legitimate NFL starting quarterback. I do think it's ridiculous and indicative of how haphazardly the Steelers are run. That Kenny Pickett has been awful for 24 starts, that somebody else came in and did clearly better than he had, and now they're going to make Pickett the guy, period. Despite everything the facts have shown, everything Pickett's done, what Rudolph did, they're making Pickett the number one guy, period. And that doesn't mean I think Rudolph should get the job. An open competition between the two, for me, still wouldn't get a good enough quarterback as your number one moving forward. But this is just worse than anything.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Mason Rudolph and I'm hearing Mike Tomlin speak at that season-ending news conference, and I hear him say that, yes, the starting quarterback for next year is on this roster. When he was asked that specifically, and not 10 minutes earlier, he pointed out on multiple occasions that free agency isn't free and Mason Rudolph is a free agent. If I'm Rudolph, I'm hearing that, I'm going, well, then what's this competition if he's not even assuring that I'm going to be on the team? What competition is there really for Kenny then, if that's the case?
I think that was competition said in air quotes, Tim. That's how I perceived it.
That's how I'm interpreting it. That's how I view it. I don't know what he was trying to do with it. But, I think a lot of that press conference.
He was trying to lie, Tim, because that's what happens when Mike Tomlin opens his mouth.
Do you think that he was lying?
That was a more transparent news conference than I've ever heard from him, because he was trying to backtrack from having walked off the podium when Brooke Pryor asked him about his contract.
Do you think that was an unfair question, by the way? I didn't.
No, not at all. It was an absolutely appropriate question.
A lot of other coaches and players were asked similar questions about their future, leaving their games when they lost that weekend too. And I think what people have to understand is, if he really was intending to leave, we didn't necessarily know if there was going to be a season-ending press conference to ask him about a couple of days later. If he was, in fact, going to leave. But, I always thought he was going to stay. And you know what? He's going to have to get an extension to stay. I know there's a lot of folks out there saying, well, let him keep coaching, but only on the 1 year. That's not how it works. He's going to get an extension. And you know what? If he does, so what? It's just Art Rooney II's money.
You could always fire him and pay him off.
When you said
they won't, but you always can.
When you said transparent, Mark, there were two things that I thought he was pretty transparent about. Number one was just out front saying, no, we're not going to keep Faulkner or Sullivan in as the play callers, as the offensive coordinators. He could have done a usual tap dance around that and say, we'll see what comes. We'll see what happens. He didn't. He said going outside the organization. I also thought he was transparent about his concerns about the injuries at inside linebacker. He could have very easily just brushed off that question and said, well, we'll see how Cole and Quan Alexander do, but he definitely opened the door to speculation that those guys might not be ready for opening day, if back at all.
Yeah, it's not like it's Dick Butkus and Ray Nitschke, but that would be disappointing because they perform fairly well. But the offensive coordinator thing, I think it's going to be Byron Leftwich because he fits the hashtag buddy system requirements, ex-Steeler, kind of a crony. You could say he was Tom Brady's coordinator when Brady won the Super Bowl in Tampa, right? Because he was the boss and Brady did whatever he was told by Byron Leftwich. It could be Luke Getsy. It could be Alex Van Pelt. You're going to get that local flavor because that's how the Steelers do things, which is stupid because we're at the point where the Steelers should be doing things exactly as they haven't. They should be running screaming in different directions after not having a playoff win for 7 years.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't want the offensive coordinator to be somebody that's in the building. I also don't want it to be Steelers adjacent. I don't want it to be somebody who had been in the building like Leftwich, or somebody who probably always wanted to be in the building like Getsy and just wants to do things the Steelers way, or gee, isn't it cool that Kenny now has Alex Van Pelt, who's also another pick quarterback, stuff like that. I don't want any of that.
Of the Athletic put it best. He said a while back that whoever they hire as coordinator shouldn't be somebody who's on anybody's favorites list on their iPhone in the Steelers organization. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I think it should be somebody that we're not talking about or maybe don't know.
There's a contacts list, Tim. I'm not an iPhone-y guy, even though I have one. You know what I mean?
I got your greater point.
Speed dial, whatever it's called.
You were also in Vegas for the Penguins game against the Golden Knights. What'd you think of that performance, how it turned out, especially the third period where the Penguins let a 2-0 lead escape?
Well, I hear the cockeyed optimist saying that you can't be too upset because they blew a 2-0 lead to the defending Stanley Cup champions on the road. I don't buy that. I think you can't blow a 2-0 lead to anybody in the third anywhere. Vegas was extremely beat up with a lot of minor leaguers in the lineup due to injury, most notably to Jack Eichel, their best player. The winning goal was scored by the son of Sidney Crosby's agent.
Yeah.
Pat Brisson's kid, which I'm happy for Pat and the kid, but my God, come on. And then after the game, like Eric Carlson had the red ass with reporters because he didn't like the questions. And Eric Carlson needs to look in the mirror. I think the two biggest factors in this team not doing well in terms of individuals are Eric Carlson and Evgeny Malkin. You can, point at the 3-on-3 failure and the power play failure. You can also trace both of those to Eric Carlson and Evgeny Malkin. Okay, these are two very highly paid guys, two Halls of Famer who are at best playing average on most nights. Eric Carlson has had such little impact on winning compared to being the defending and reigning Norris Trophy champion as the league's best defenseman from last year. He's just out there playing very ordinary hockey. The thing that stands out the most about him is his mistakes. And Malkin's just, the same old Malkin, only worse. A lot of dumb penalties like that slash that put the Penguins on the back foot in the third period at Vegas. Lazy flyby, defensive work, bad turnovers through the neutral zone, points gathered when they're not meaningful, getting slower as the season goes on. Those two guys are killing them. I mean, if you want to point fingers at individuals, those are the guys.
Well, Mark, I'm looking at where they're at in the standings right now, and I keep hearing the excuse of, well, they're 500. It's not as bad as you guys might be making it out to be. But the whole league is designed to be at 500, kind of like the NFL at this point. Like, we use the same analogy for the Steelers all the time, which is, well, hey, they've never had a losing season. Well, so what? Like 2/3 of the league has 9 wins or more.
You're telling me the Penguins have 21 wins and 22 losses, and that's rotten.
What I wrote about
in a playoff spot right now, and they're not playing like a team that's going to go on a. I mean, I know they were like 10-3-3 going into that Knights game, and didn't make up any ground because of the stupidity of the loser point, how it dilutes the entire standings. But they're just not a team that looks the part.
Right, and I wrote about it in the Trib today. They're playing the Coyotes tonight. You can use the Arizona Coyotes as a barometer for where the Penguins are. You know what I mean? Like, this should be eye-opening to any Penguins fan who's thinking they're just going to catch up and it's going to be lightning in a bottle eventually. The Coyotes are basically who the Penguins are right now.
You know what the problem is, too, is that they think they're still who they were. And that's even the ironic part is, and I see this with a lot of teams that used to be good. Not only do the guys who were here when they were good think that's who they still are, guys who weren't here think that. And here's something that leads me to question the organization, Tim. Why did the Penguins have to have 4 nights in Vegas? Why did they come out 3 days early? They had a rookie party. Yahoo. Could have done that, coming out a day or two later. Why is the rookie party that important right now anyway? Why do you have to go out of way to have extra nights in Vegas to do it? Eric Carlson missed practice here in Vegas. Why did he do that? He played the game. They canceled a practice a whole day here in Vegas. What, was that because it was more important to be in Vegas? I have a lot of questions about the way this team is being operated right now. It's being operated like they want them to be, not how they are.
I heard somebody on Sports Talk Radio bring up the point that for everybody who's being critical of Mike Tomlin, are you going to bring that same energy for criticism of Mike Sullivan? Yeah, I am. And I feel like I have.
At the end of the year, certainly, if they don't make the playoffs, he's got to go. Not because he's a bad coach, but because the message will have been lost. And he's responsible for stuff like this trip to Vegas. You know what I mean? He can say no to that. He doesn't have to acquiesce to what the guys want. This team is very much a get-along gang like the Steelers. Never's heard a discouraging word, except Eric Carlson bitching about the media.
Richard says what's maddening about the Penguins is the complete lack of urgency from the players and the coaching staff in wanting to do anything different because a few egos might get stepped on. And
that's for sure true. That's for sure true.
That goes over to tactically, specifically on the power play.
Yeah, they need to rip the power play apart and rebuild it and not worry about who's unhappy, but they're not going to do that. They are going to let the power play rot down to the bone before they really fix it.
What's ironic, Mark, is in all of their attempts, all of their steps to keep Sidney Crosby and the core happy, the guy that they're going to lose is the one that most directly affects their winning and losing, and that's Jake Gensel. because they've kept everybody else. But Gensel's going to be the guy
Well, no,
that might
he
be
doesn't most
sacrificed.
directly affect their winning and losing. Their best player by far is still Sidney Crosby.
No, I mean of the supporting staff, of other people around those guys. Like they kept Russ, they kept Raquel, they kept Tristan Jari. They threw money at all those guys to keep the core happy. They kept the core itself together. And
They would have been better off a couple years ago instead of signing Raquel and Russ, getting Gensel tied up then.
Of course, yes. Well, I guess you can't.
He was clearly the better player then, even. But then again, we had Tweedledee and Tweedledum as the hockey ops guys. Maybe that should have been a priority for Dubas the minute he got to Pittsburgh. I don't know.
This one comes from Pete, who says the fumble and an interception made the difference in the final result. He's talking about the Buffalo game. And yeah, I do think the fake punt also was something that had a big result. I mean, that was the first time DeMar Hamlin had touched the ball all year. And like I said, I felt like that's a fake punt that you run from about 5 yards closer, not from where they did, because it was slow developing. The Chiefs didn't look fooled at all.
Well, I understand it's a quarterback era. But, not everything is blamed on the quarterback. But that's what we tend to do.
And that goes back to the Allen conversation that we're having earlier about the Bills. I think the Bills are the Bills have gotten in Allen's way as much as, if not more, than Allen has gotten in the Bills' way of not getting to a Super Bowl.
Well, that's also become, it indicates the influence of, even though I hate to give them credit, all the yelling mug shows on ESPN, whether it's Greenberg, Stephen A., McAfee, and you got to add in, Coward and Bayless from Fox as well. Okay. Every time, something happens badly, all of those shows revert to blaming quarterbacks. They blame quarterbacks and coaches and nobody else.
Yep.
And that has trickled down to how we think.
Matt says Pickett is a bust. If the Steelers have to protect his feelings this much, then he's not the guy. I gave him 2 years to prove something. He showed nothing. Season 3 will be a disaster.
It'll be make or break, certainly.
Do you believe Tomlin at all when he says that they're closer this year than they were at the end of last year? Because I don't.
I don't see it, that's for sure. Tim, one thing I want to mention about Mike Sullivan, too, before I forget. The Islanders fired Lane Lambert, whatever his name is. He's such a bad coach, I'm not even sure how to pronounce his name. And replaced him with Patrick Waugh, right? Who hasn't coached in the league for almost for 8 years. Okay. And Patrick Waugh run that Jack Adams with Colorado his first year, but then the adrenaline wore off and they fell apart the next 2 years. That's the kind of coach you get if you're making an emergency replacement. That's why you got to think it out.
Eric says Penn's 5 points out of a wild card spot again. He goes on to say it took the Penguins a month to make up 4 points and to be 2 points out of the playoffs. Now they're back to 5 points out. Yeah, that's the point that I was making. With the loser point, that's how it works. Much like it works with the Steelers when we're heaping praise on them from never having a losing season in 17 years. When the entire league is structured to have you be within 8 to 10 wins, a third of the league is between 8 to 10 wins. Don't be shocked when it happens.
Tim, that's my major criticism with Sullivan. They would rather let the power play kill the team for 82 games than have Evgeny Malkin know an uncomfortable moment.
Gosh, a lot of people angry with the Penguins right now. There's a lot more here.
That is their priority.
Matt says some analytics this week before Vegas put the Penguins as having like a 78% chance of making the playoffs. They just don't look the part right now, even if they go on a winning streak. What do you think their actual percentage chance is at this point? 40-60, 50-50, because they've got three teams between them in the playoffs right now.
I would say 5. Maybe
a little bit more. Maybe. Is Harbaugh due for a Super Bowl? First time in AFC championship games since 2012. Feels like he needs to win it this year, given their talent, where he has won. He won one with Flacco, remember. Due again? I guess you could say that. I mean, I just think they're better.
I think Baltimore, even at home, is going to have a tough time because I don't think they can outscore Kansas City. I think the Ravens play a certain type of football, the same type of football the Steelers play, and I don't think it's going to work against Mahomes.
See, I like both home teams, actually, Mark, and I think both spreads are pretty appropriately set. About a field goal for Baltimore and about 7 for San Francisco against the Lions. We now have to go on the road.
Do we know about Debo yet?
We don't know about Debo yet, no.
That could close the gap a little.
That could maybe allow the Lions to cover, but I'd still take San Francisco.
I'm rooting for the Lions. They're one of the few very legitimate Cinderella stories in sports. I mean, when you consider how long it's been since they've won, I mean, my God, Tim, Milk Plum was the quarterback the last time they won something. So I think they're a great story.
Steven also points out, I forgot about this, Diggs dropped the 52-yard pass late in the fourth quarter, too. So, like, how's that on Allen?
He dropped another pass, too. There's a guy who talks a whole lot of yang and didn't get it done.
Rich says, Mark has convinced me Kenny is actually not a very good quarterback, even though I have multiple friends that still have faith he's starting material. That being said, I think we're in quarterback purgatory. The Steelers won't pay for a top free agent. Mason will probably leave for more money, and we don't have a good enough pick in the draft to get one. What would you do, Mark? Would you go after Cousins or Baker Mayfield if you were the Steelers?
I think Baker Mayfield would be nuts not to re-sign in Tampa Bay. I think that's a great situation for him. I would have problem with Cousins recovering from the knee surgery.
Achilles, yeah.
Achilles, rather, yeah. You know what I would do, though? I would trade a second-round pick for Justin Fields. I mean, I know they're not going to do that, so I'm going to barely ever talk about it. But that's what I would do. I would trade a second-round pick for Justin Fields. I think he has more potential, far more potential than Kenny Pickett.
Real quick, Mark, Penguins plan.
And Tim, you could, if you got the right coordinator, you could do like Baltimore did and build the offense around him, construct it, semi-uniquely with the running part, the legs part, like Baltimore has with Lamar. Not that he's Lamar, but that's what I would want.
Yeah, you just got to get yourself a real coordinator, and I think they thought they were doing that with Kennedy and Pickett, and they were mistaken on both ends.
Right. I don't know. I mean, again, this would go against what I've been preaching, but maybe Luke Getsy.
Sam says, will you have special guests during February sweeps? Well, we don't have February sweeps on the internet, and we usually don't have guests. Although, Mark, if Mr. Friday Afternoon is nearby, if you want to get him on for the last 2 minutes, we can certainly do that.
He's not here. No, amazingly, I didn't sleep with him, Tim. No, I'm in the waiting. I'm in the counting the days till August part of my career. So there you go.
Yeah, Mark's August sweeps are entirely different.
That's
All right.
right.
So, Mark, how was the rest of the trip, by the way? Did you do anything else? Were there concerts or something? Why did you go out there in the first place? Oh, just for the Penguins game, right? To see the Penguins.
The Penguins game, and I went to Rangers nights the one night. I saw Steve Byrne that same night after that game. Went to my restaurants. I went to a Liverpool pub yesterday, McMullen's Irish Pub. I was not aware of it until I happened to cross it online. So I went there to watch Liverpool win at Bournemouth 4-0 and maintain first place in the league. So, yeah, it was good. I probably stayed out here like I always do a day too long. And I'm flying red-eye home tonight, which just sucks.
So the Penguins got in too early and you stayed too long.
Yeah, but I'm not fighting for a playoff spot. Yeah, Tim, that stuff like that, I know people are going to tell me that these guys have lives and they don't have to be hockey players 24/7. I think it is very unlike. Whoa, sorry about that, Tim. My cord fell out. I think it's very unlike the Penguins to do something like that, and it just doesn't sit well with me.
Mark, when he comes back from the Red Eye, will be on the show on Tuesday. This has been Madden Benz Unfiltered, once again brought to you by Rush to Crush Cancer. More than a bike ride, it's a mission. Join us May 19th for Rush to Crush Cancer bike ride. To register, go to Rush to Crush Cancer and help us in the fight against cancer. Join the ride. Tim Benz and Mark Madden here at Madden Benz Unfiltered, back with you next Monday as we set up the Super Bowl.